Welcome to the BEASTwriter Family, where social media engagement is encouraged. I am your host, Ryan Sakamoto, and today we are going to be making sense of my two bold predictions as it pertains to the San Francisco 49ers, and that is the 49ers staying pat at number 3 and selecting Ohio State quarterback Justin Fields, and then doubling down on those gains by keeping Fred Warner in San Francisco. We are going to talk about the two hot topics that I've been bringing up and pounding on the table for on why Fred Warner needs to be extended. Ultimately, I think that's going to happen. So 49ers fans, you're in luck. This is going to be a hot podcast. All right. So again, before I go ahead and get started, I just want to say thank you to each and every one of you for subscribing to my channel. Just be sure to turn on and flip on the bell notifications so you get notified when I go live or when I upload content. Also, I'm looking at my analytics as I do every single day, and I'm seeing 73% of you guys are liking all my stuff, watching all my videos, but have yet to subscribe to my channel. Please do so in the lower right-hand corner of your screen as you stay up to date on all things Beast in real time. All right, so without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. Let's not waste any time. We are going to dive right into it as to why I believe those two bold predictions are ultimately going to play out in San Francisco. Let me just pull up the tickers here. I know you guys like these tickers. All right, so the 49ers take quarterback Justin Fields at number 3. The question is why? We hear all these names like Mac Jones, Kyle Shanahan, John Lynch at Mac Jones Pro Day. But they didn't go to Justin Fields' pro day, but they went to Trey Lance's pro day. And then we hear about talk like, oh, are they going after Zach Wilson, which I still believe is the perfect fit of all the quarterbacks coming out of this draft class. And that could still very well be an option. But if the Jets take Zach Wilson at 2, which I'll talk about a little bit later in this podcast, don't be surprised if they roll with Justin Fields. All right, so let's take a few steps backwards and see how this scenario actually has played out in real time. Well, for those who don't know or can't recall, the 49ers went ahead and moved up from the 12th overall pick to the number 3 overall pick with the Miami Dolphins, moving up 9 spots and giving up 4 draft picks in return. By giving up and yielding 4 draft picks in return, you're giving up essentially the farm. That's 3 first-round draft picks and an additional third-round pick in next year's draft class. So that's a lot of draft capital, moving up just 9 spots for the number 3 overall pick. But after thinking long and hard, because if you guys watch my earlier podcast, I said the 49ers likely target is Zach Wilson at number 2, and I still believe he's the best fit. If he's sitting there, and so is Justin Fields, don't be surprised if they roll with Zach Wilson over Justin Fields. Zach Wilson is the better play. But ultimately, I think he's going to go to the New York Jets. If that plan plays out, they're going to leave no choice and leave no stone unturned. I think they're going to go with Justin Fields at number 3 because ultimately, when you look at the vertical board, he's the best quarterback. And I'm not talking about Trey Lance or Mac Jones. They're not even in that tier. It's ultimately going to be Justin Fields out of the Ohio State University. Now, getting back to the podcast specifically as it pertains why I won't believe they will trade up at number 2 is simply because, again, second half of this bold prediction is what I say. I said Fred Warner might be traded to the New York Jets so the 49ers can move up 1 spot, select Zach Wilson, and yield the number 23 overall pick from the New York Jets in return. So they would get some draft capital in return back, some first-round draft capital in return back, while then also moving up 1 spot and getting the quarterback of their choice. Now that line of thinking has obviously changed. I didn't say it's going to happen. I said, don't be surprised if it does, though, because it makes sense. And it got a lot of good feedback from 49ers fans and Jets fans. Positive feedback, why it makes sense. Now, will it happen? I don't know, but it's definitely something to think about. And that's what you're here for in the BEASTwriter Family, is to make you guys think as this scenario could actually play out. And hey, it could still play out because Fred Warner hasn't been extended yet. Obviously, Fred Warner Sr. is on it, talking about it, going on Twitter and talking about it. So come on, guys. Let's put 2 and 2 together. But ultimately, I'm going to be optimistic. I think Fred Warner is going to stay in San Francisco. And this is good news for San Francisco 49ers fans. All right. So if they don't trade up to number 2, they don't trade Fred Warner, they're going to take Justin Fields at number 3. All right. Trevor Lawrence is obviously going to be the Jacksonville Jaguars pick at number 1. Zach Wilson will ultimately be the Jets pick at number 2. That leaves Justin Fields at number 3. But the question remains to be seen, why? Why are the 49ers going to go after Justin Fields? Well, I talk about scheme fit. It doesn't matter how good the player is if he doesn't fit the scheme. And that's something I really want you guys to think about, because when you hear about all these players and their intangibles and the critical factors, ultimately it comes down to, do they fit their scheme? I mean, if you're looking for an edge rusher, is he better in a 2-point stance or a 3-point stance? Because if you're looking for an edge rusher in the 4-3 defensive end position, you're looking for a 3-point stance type of a guy. However, if you're looking for a 3-4 outside linebacker, you're looking for a two-point stance kind of a guy. So again, the alignment, the pre-snap recognition, how these players understand schemes. I thought this was very interesting. I know not too many people are talking about this, but there was a question on Georgia's pro day as regards to Azeez Ojulari. And to me, he's considered a tweener, a hybrid, if you will, a hybrid between an edge rusher at the defensive end position in a 4-3 base, or a stand-up 3-4 outside linebacker. The question was asked, how are you in certain schemes? And they named the specific schemes. I'm not going to talk and go into details on those schemes. That's for a different podcast. But it kind of sounded like Azeez Ojulari did not know how to answer that question. He's like, oh yeah, we used a lot of 3-4 and 4-3. I can play in any one. But it goes beyond that. If you want to peel back layers of the onion to get to the core in the interview process, when you're interviewing a player, if I'm saying, hey, do you think you can fit our scheme? Do you know what we run here? And if he says, yeah, I can run a 4-3 or a 3-4, but they're different. It's not just simply running a 4-3 or a 3-4. You got to look about the 4-3 under, or is it a 4-3 over, based on the 3 technique defensive tackle where he's lined up. Interesting to point out. That was something that I took and I was like, whoa, maybe Azeez Ojulari doesn't know what he's talking about. He's just saying that because he's been coached up to say that. Now, I'm not saying that's the case, but if I was looking at that, which I did, I was taken back a little bit, but I don't think he really understood the question. He just kind of like answered like he knew what he was talking about, really didn't. But questions like that, you guys are all asking me, what kind of interview questions do scouts ask? Those are the types of questions that they ask. Aside from the football stuff, do you think you fit our scheme, and do you know what we do here? Anyways, I'll talk about that a little bit more in detail on the live stream at 2:30 p.m. But getting back to this podcast specifically, I know I'm going off topic. Talk about scheme fit, right? Scheme fit. Why is Justin Fields a scheme fit? Well, Shanahan wants a dual threat quarterback who can open up the playbook. I said that since day one. If you go back to the Mike Shanahan days, his dad over at the San Francisco 49ers, the year they won the Super Bowl, he had Brent Jones at tight end. He had Ricky Waters in the backfield, lined up with William Bar None Floyd at fullback. Had John Taylor, had Jerry Rice, Jesse Sapolo, Guy McIntyre, Bart Oates. The list goes on and on and on. Derek Deese, you get the picture. All right. With that lineup, what was he able to do with Steve Young behind center? Run naked bootlegs. What does Zach Wilson do well? Runs naked bootlegs. How come in all these scripted quarterback pro days, you see the quarterback doing what? Naked bootlegs. Go figure. Justin Fields, same thing. He can run naked bootlegs. So if you're looking for a guy like Trey Lance or Mac Jones, those aren't the type of guys that you want for your system today. Because if you're in a win now mode, Trey Lance, let me tell you something. He's about 3 to 5 years away. He's very raw. Now, he has the critical factors to have the highest potential of any quarterback in this draft class, which is a good thing to have. But at the end of the day, if I'm picking at number 3, I want a safer, sure bet, especially if I'm giving up the farm to move up to number 3. And ultimately, if Zach Wilson's off the board, I'm going with Justin Fields. All right. Aside from what Justin Fields brings to the table as running these naked bootlegs, he gives them their best option, right? He's tough, physical quarterback. We've seen what happened in the college football playoff where he was playing injured. Showed a lot of heart. That was on display. I tweeted that out in real time. The kid is he's a warrior. The guy's just a straight up warrior. And again, when you look at the critical factors and what Kyle Shanahan likes to do in his offense, you can see why he would like a guy like Justin Fields. He can throw off platform on the short to intermediate throws. That's something that you don't see from Jimmy Garoppolo. Jimmy Garoppolo cannot do that. Rarely do you see him run to his left or to his right and make an accurate throw on the proper shoulder. Rarely do you see that. Justin Fields has the intangibles to make that happen. And he also can extend plays with his legs, which brings me to my next point. Jimmy Garoppolo cannot. So while Jimmy Garoppolo tries to live to play another down, he'll rather force the ball downfield because he knows he's going to get sacked if he doesn't. And that is where the 49ers run into problems. And that's where I think Kyle Shanahan thinks and looks at this and says, you know what? I had enough of Jimmy Garoppolo. It's time to move on. Let's get Justin Fields if we can't get Zach Wilson. Last but not least, what I like about Justin Fields and why I believe Kyle Shanahan and GM John Lynch are so bullish on Justin Fields is the simple fact that he stands tall within the pocket, willing to take a shot. That says a lot about his character and who he is as a person, that he will lay it all on the line for his wide receiver if he's open, and he will take that hit knowing full well he's going to get blown up. These are things that you look for in the quarterback position. I really like Justin Fields. However, I was watching his pro day, and I would have to disagree. I would have to disagree with Daniel Jeremiah when he said he hit it out of the ballpark with this pro day. I didn't see that. In fact, I saw a lot of inaccuracies in his game when it came to the short to intermediate game. I just pointed out he was accurate there, but as pro day, he wasn't so accurate, and that's with no coverage behind him. Or in front of him, I should say. If you watch the pro day, you will notice a lot of the receivers were catching the ball behind them. They had to pump on the brakes on those intermediate routes just to catch the ball. They had to run their choppy routes coming out of the brakes to catch the ball on the proper shoulder, but it was the wrong shoulder. So yeah, the catches may have been made, but were they in stride? Were they on the proper shoulder? This is what accuracy comes into play, and this is why I talk about accuracy time and time again. Justin Fields brings me to the weaknesses of his game. Let's just go ahead and talk about that. I know you guys like these stickers. I think it's up there. Yeah. So what are the weaknesses to his game, right? Just talk about how he's kind of inaccurate. He's not the most accurate quarterback, but he has the critical factors where he can coach that stuff up. He's a 1 to 2 read quarterback. Same thing with Jimmy Garoppolo, right? He doesn't scan the field to go through his progressions. Same thing as Jimmy Garoppolo. Doesn't have the natural feel for edge pressure. Same thing with Jimmy Garoppolo. Rarely looks off the safety. Same thing as Jimmy Garoppolo, but he is not a Jimmy Garoppolo clone. The guy has way more potential and a higher ceiling. Let's not get it twisted. All these things I just pointed out that are weaknesses in his game can all be coached up. Again, am I high on Justin Fields as much as I'm high on Zach Wilson? Absolutely not. But if Zach Wilson is off the board to the New York Jets, you have to take a quarterback if you're giving up the farm to move up to number 3. Ultimately, the best guy for their system is Justin Fields. All right, so that's where I see that coming into play. And let's talk about Fred Warner. Let me just get that up here because I know you guys want to talk about Fred Warner. And you guys are saying, oh, Fred Warner could possibly be leaving. Beast, what's going on? Ultimately, this is my thoughts on Fred Warner. Let me get the ticker here, and we will get started. Fred Warner stays in San Francisco. That is right. I believe Fred Warner is ultimately going to stay in San Francisco. Why? Well, I said in my earlier podcast that the 49ers might trade up with the New York Jets for number 2 while yielding a first-round draft pick in return, number 23 overall. So they would move up one spot from 3 to 2 and then also get an additional first-round pick for trading Fred Warner. That is a potential scenario that could very well still play out. But ultimately, in the end, I don't think it'll happen. And again, I didn't say it's going to happen. Just don't be surprised if it does. And Jets fans and 49ers fans got a lot of good feedback, and you guys all agreed, yeah, it's something that could happen, man. Didn't see, Beast, you're not saying it will, but, it kind of makes sense. Kind of is sliding it. Like, it does make sense. And the reason why Fred Warner Sr. is chiming in on this, too, and tweeting stuff out, because he wants his son signed just like I do in San Francisco, obviously. But in the end, again, 49er fans, rest assured, I think Fred Warner is going to stay in San Francisco. Here are my reasons why. My gut feeling is Warner stays in San Francisco because I think, here's my third bold prediction. I think Jimmy Garoppolo is going to get traded on draft day to the New England Patriots, excuse me. If you watch my earlier podcast, I even said this. Once Garoppolo is moved from the Niners, that will give him $23.6 million in cap savings to go ahead and sign who? Extend Fred Warner. If you watch my earlier podcast on how Garoppolo's contract prohibits Fred Warner being extended, you will know this. Also, Fred Warner Sr. also mentioned this because he follows me on my podcast and here on YouTube and part of the BEASTwriter family. He said the same thing and echoed the same analysis. So with that being said, I think Garoppolo is the reason why Fred Warner is not being extended, or One of the reasons, because if you look at where the 49ers cap situation is currently, they're only $19.5 million head above water, and they need about $8 to $9 million for this 2021 rookie class. So that leaves you with only about $10 million head above water to re-sign or extend Fred Warner, and you know he's not going to settle for that in a front-loaded deal. So you're not banking on Warner's future success. You're banking on the player that you're getting today. So that's why the 49ers have been unable to sign Fred Warner to an extended contract. Now, I am very optimistic. How come I can't optimistic? I am very optimistic that Fred Warner will ultimately be re-signed by the San Francisco 49ers in a front-loaded deal. I believe Jimmy Garoppolo is going to be shipped off to the New England Patriots. Ultimately, I think that's going to happen. So we have 3 moving parts here. That's 3 bold predictions. I'm calling it here on April 1st. This is not an April Fool's Day thing. I'm not saying, haha, April Fools, April 1, haha, I got you guys. No, this is a legit prediction that I'm putting up on April 1st, and the draft is what? At the end of the month. I'm putting it out 4 weeks in advance. This is what I'm saying. The 49ers will take Justin Fields at number 3. Bold prediction number 1. Bold prediction number 2, they keep Fred Warner in San Francisco. Bold prediction number 3, they double down on both those gains and tripling down on that by go ahead and trading away Jimmy Garoppolo to the New England Patriots for either a first-round pick or a second-round pick. Now, I know the 49ers have been reported to want a first-round pick, number 15 overall. However, ideally, I said in my earlier podcast, making sense of Jimmy Garoppolo trade value, that ultimately the Patriots would only give up a second-round pick, which is number 46 overall. So if the 49ers are sitting there and they can yield 2 second-round draft picks, that will give 49er fan base something to look forward to because they already gave up and yielded 3 first-round picks. But you get something in return. You get 2 second-round picks at 43 and 46 from the New England Patriots. So now you can leverage the second round how you see fit, or possibly trade back up into the tail end of the first round and get another guy that you want. Let's say running back, let's say cornerback, let's say edge rusher. These are all choices and they're all endless. So there's endless of possibilities that the San Francisco 49ers can go in. So while I do think Warner will get re-signed, might be a little longer than anticipated, I think that's going to happen. I think Jimmy Garoppolo is still on the trading block, despite what GM John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan say. What are your thoughts, Forever Faithful? Tune in. I want to hear your thoughts. Drop your comments in the Dropbox section below and let me know. Beast, I agree with you. I think Fred Warner is ultimately going to get re-signed. I think they need to get rid of Jimmy Garoppolo, save $23.6 million to extend Fred Warner. I agree with you that we can yield another first-round pick if Bill Belichick is willing to let go of that first-round pick. If not, a second-rounder. So we have number 43 and number 46, and we can leverage the draft on day 2 how we see fit. Thank you so much for tuning in. I know you guys had been popping up questions. If you did and like the stuff that I had to say, please hit the subscribe button in the lower right-hand corner of your screen as you stay up to date on all things Beast in real time. I was getting notifications on some of the questions that you had in regards to Fred Warner, in regards to Jimmy Garoppolo, in regards to who the 49ers are selecting that Justin Fields. I just cover killing 3 birds with 1 stone on this podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in. Have a good day. I'll be back on the live stream with my man Mike Tang at 2:30 p.m. as we keep things unfiltered here in the BEASTwriter family. BEASTwriter out.